Good afternoon, everyone. It is David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office with a very detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for July the 5th, 2023. I hope you all enjoyed my fireworks last night. Spectacular. I'm looking into doing something like that again for next year for 4th of July too, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we gotta keep an eye on the tropics. So here's a look at the Atlantic-wide satellite imagery from tropicaltidbits.com at Levi Cowan. There will be a link in the description below this video leading to these satellite images provided by Levi Cowan. So we can see a nice looking tropical wave that is roughly located about 10 degrees north by about 40 degrees west longitude. This is not going to develop into anything significant, as what the NHC does state that this is not going to do anything except to bring quite a bit of rainfall to some of the islands in the next couple of days. Now, as this looks pretty much favorable for tropical cyclones, the air is too dry to the west of this and also to the north. But not only that, there's quite a bit of shear that is cutting across here of the Atlantic because we got a upper level tropospheric trough that is located to the north of these islands. And so that's what that's doing, is that's increasing the shear across much of the main development region. We also got some more Saharan dust that is coming off of Africa as we speak. So overall, nothing really favorable for tropical cyclones in the next 5 to 7 days. But I'll tell you what, by the time we go into late July, early August, I do expect we're going to see another favorable window out here for more tropical formation. So now when we take a look here at the East Pacific sector, this again is from tropicaltidbits.com. We can see definitely a very active intertropical convergent zone. You can see it right here with a lot of the deep convection. We got westerly winds here on the southern side. We got winds from the easterly and from the northerly direction cutting across on the northern side of this intertropical convergence zone. And there could be a couple of areas to watch eventually within this entanglement of deep convection and thunderstorm activity. When we take a look at the National Hurricane Center, there is a 70 and 20 to 30% chance for tropical formation with these two areas to watch. Yes, two areas that we have right now over in the Eastern Pacific. But this is typical for a fairly robust El Nino type episode that we're in right now, where we see a lot warmer water temperatures to the north across, say, to the south of southern Mexico and across much of the Central Pacific. So this is pretty typical for a busy El Nino, and no surprise, we have two areas to watch at the moment. In the meantime, there is nothing to worry about in the next 7 days in the Atlantic basin. But again, just because there's nothing to watch right now doesn't mean we just ignore it and there's nothing to watch, because again, we do have tropical waves right here and a little bit of a wave right here and some enhancement of convection over in the western Gulf of Mexico. So there's always something to be alerted about when it comes to these weather systems or these tropical waves. So with that being said, we're now going to be taking a look at our GFS and Euro models. Now, I'm going to kind of do this as simply as I can without confusing you all, without being boring here in the video. Is what you're looking at here is, of course, the GFS model, but there's a couple of perimeters that are overlaid here by the help of Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com. Again, a link in the description below this video. But we can see these flags right here are wind barbs. So this indicates which way the wind is coming from at 850 millibars, which is 5,000 feet above the surface. These are geopotential heights at 850 millibars. And these colors, these yellow, orange, these orange and yellow colors right in here indicate vorticity, how much spin there is in the atmosphere. So what we want to see, if we go and look at the Eastern Pacific, what we want to see is a lot of these vortmaxes to actually focus and become a tropical storm or tropical depression or a hurricane, right? Here's another one right here for an example. Well, not an example because this is an actual forecast, but we can see that this is what we look for when it comes to the Atlantic basin, right? We're not seeing anything like that at the moment. So kind of taking this forward over the next few days, we can see the day 3, strong subtropical ridge here carved out across the central Atlantic, helping to enhance trade winds, Saharan dust, dry air coming off of Africa. That helps to prevent these tropical waves of getting organized and becoming tropical disturbances. By day 5, by Monday, July the 10th, still nothing. Really suppressed phase out here in the main development region, as again, we have this high that is going to be well anchored across the main development region as well as the central North Atlantic basin. Now, going forward here in time, let's go all the way out to day 7. Like I said here, nothing really to watch closely for other than maybe another tropical wave here coming off of Africa. Might see some interesting activity on the GFS model if this comes to pass. As always, this is just a current forecast, and if we just go back to previous runs, there's not a lot of consistency here at all by any means. And the 18Z run is now beginning to render, so that will be interesting to see down the road. But at the moment, very, very quiet in the Atlantic basin. On the other hand, let's take a look at the Euro model going forward here within the next couple of days. Again, tropical wave right here approaching the Leeward and Windward Islands. Maybe some heavy rainfall, some breezy winds is all you're going to see with another tropical wave here setting up shop off the central African region as well as the Cabo Verde Islands. That really falls apart though because again we're in a really unfavorable period in the main development region where we have strong trades cutting across here. Really nothing tangled up here to kind of set off a very strong tropical wave, and it kind of congregates into a tropical like depression or storm. However, yeah, there might be a couple or two of tropical waves that kind of bring disruptive weather across the islands of the Caribbean. Maybe some rain, gusty winds, inclement weather, but nothing too substantially crazy. No hurricanes, no tropical storms or named storms throughout the next 7 to 10 days, according to the European model, which is good. So there is agreement that we're not going to see anything pop off at all. Now, I did want to show you all really quickly of the Eastern Pacific Basin, because yes, we do have folks that do watch these videos, and some of you are probably wondering, when is David going to talk about the Eastern Pacific Basin? I'm glad I'm able to do it in this video. So we're going to kind of go through this rather quickly, and we can see our first named storm, or our second named storm. Our third named storm that is going to develop here across the Eastern Pacific, with another one shortly behind it that could get going here in the next 90 hours. By day 5, we could be talking about a hurricane, perhaps just to the south of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, with another system that tries to develop right off the coast there of central and southern Mexico. So a bit of an active period here coming up for southern Mexico, the Eastern Pacific, with maybe another disturbance that might try to just get going here in the next 7 to 10 days. So now back and look at the Atlantic Basin here on our relative humidity plot, our deep layer moisture plot, we should say. So brown colors indicate drier air, while turquoise blue colors here indicate more moisture in the atmosphere. So when we look at the mid-level and upper-level moisture plot, again, we can see lots of dry air intrusions coming in off of Africa. Saharan dust, we call it, which prevents these systems to develop. And look at that. In the next 10 days, a big Saharan dust outbreak perhaps could be in the making here by mid-July. So again, that tells us nothing is really favorable with a lot of moisture down here to the south. But again, this is typically the period that we don't typically look for named storms, right? It's usually a quiet period. It's when we get into late July, early August, we get a little bit more activity. And then again, usually by, say, late August into September is really when everything hits the fan. When it comes to main development region, tropical formation, that usually happens, all right? And usually that's when we get our highest ACE points and our most named storms, usually within that 2 to 3 week period. Also, what's not going to help out is lots of shear. We can see these orange and red colors indicate lots of deep layer shear from the westerly direction, because again, we have trade winds that are blowing out of this direction. We have upper level winds that are kind of light, but they are blowing in out of the westerly direction. So that equates to westerly shear anywhere between 30 to 50 knots, which is not even favorable for tropical cyclones. So as we go into the next 4 days, really nothing favorable at all. Now, the shear might back off later on in the period here by day 7 and day 10, as you can see here, with more anticyclonic shear vectors that we see here indicated on the map, which usually illustrates lighter shear. And if we get a tropical wave that forms within that environment, we can get some favorable conditions. So now when we take a look at our full screen map here, what's ahead as far as are we going to see a favorable period coming up for the Atlantic Basin, you might be asking, and the answer is yes, we certainly will. By late July into August, I believe things are just going to turn the corner for a very active period perhaps. And so this is a look at the European ensemble prediction system control 200 hectopascals velocity potential anomaly from weatherbells.com. So simply to put this, when we get these green and blue colors, this indicates upward motion, more thunderstorm activity that typically results. Okay, lower pressure, more thunderstorms, lots of moisture, less Saharan dust, lesser shear to speak of. But when we have these orange and red colors, this usually indicates a lot more shear, drier air, subsidence in the atmosphere, and an unfavorable environment. So when we go forward in the period here, so this is a look in time. So these time scales, I know it's hard to understand here. I'm simplifying this as much as I can. So this is July the 6th, right here. So these lines, hard to take note here on this screen, but these are lines of different periods of time, and we're going down later in time. So when we see this, we can see where the upward motion is going to favor the most. And here is a Mercator projection. Earth is not flat. We see this all the way from 0 degrees in latitude or longitude all the way to again 0 degrees in longitude again. So it's a full 360 map showing you what's going on at the equator. And this is a Hove-Muller diagram, in other words, to put it into simple words. So we can see probably when we look at this box, so when we kind of scroll down right about in here, is basically where the Atlantic Basin resides. So a unfavorable period possibly coming up by mid-July. That's the Saharan dust that we see. And then perhaps by early August, throughout the rest of the period into mid-August, we might get into a pretty busy period if the sea surface temperatures remain well above average, the upper ocean heat content is there, and we got a lot of moisture to speak of. So probably the last week of July into early August, middle of August, things might get very active in the main development region, as well as in the Gulf of Mexico and the North Atlantic. These tropical waves coming off of Africa, the West African monsoon season really gets enhanced because of the upward motion that we typically see. So with that being said, let's take a look now at our sea surface temperatures. These are the actual temperatures. This is not departures by any means. And wow, it has really warmed up. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And wait until I show you the comparison of upper ocean heat content in the Atlantic. It is sickening. It is ironically significantly scary when it comes to how far above average we actually are at. So this is the 26 degree isotherm line right in here. mean, that is much further north. You don't see that this time of the year. These water temperatures, in fact, could be closely related to early September standards. So with the waters being this warm already, I could only imagine of how much warmer it's going to get. By late August into September, usually by mid-September is when we reach the warmest sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic before we get that cool down as we go into the winter season. But wow, really warm. I mean, the Gulf of Mexico here, really warm. In fact, if we take a look here, let me bring up another tab to show you just how warm the Gulf of Mexico actually is. I mean, this is ridiculous. 31 Celsius here, right off the Miami coast, right off the Louisiana coast, 31, even 32 Celsius. That is mid-80s, upper 80s. That might not seem very warm, but that is jet fuel for hurricanes. So you can kind of get an idea just how warm it is here on this map. 30, 31, 32 Celsius in the Gulf of Mexico. It's just, wow. You don't see that. And here's why. Look at the departures from normal. Sea surface temperature anomalies. Anywhere between 1 to 2 Celsius above normal in the Gulf of Mexico. Huge recovery there, by the way, in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. In the Bahamas, running 2 to almost 3 Celsius above normal. And look at this. In the main development region, way above normal. I mean, that is 2 Celsius right here. Might even get close to, that might be even 3 Celsius right off the central West African coast. Even look at this, the Cabo Verde Islands really stoking there at around 2 to 3 Celsius above normal. Still holding on to that warm Iberian Peninsula horseshoe shape of warmer water. The Canary Current really staying strong, sending that warmer water southward. And that's why we have these well above average sea surface temperatures that really are hanging around. And I mean, we only have another month, maybe a month and a half before the peak of hurricane season really takes hold. So now, another perimeter that I like to look at, or another tool, is total ocean heat content. Okay, this is how much heat is being stored below the surface of the ocean. So the higher these numbers are, the more heat content and energy is being stored for the Atlantic hurricane season during the peak of it. So this is 3 years ago. We are doing comparisons here because what I'm about to show you, folks, is absolutely ironic, uncharted, literally just crazy. Now, I'm not trying to hype this up for scare, for views, folks. This is real science. This is real stuff that I'm showing you, okay? So this is from the University of Miami, and simple to put it, this is 3 years ago. Remember that season? Gave us over 30 named storms? You name it. And look at where the upper ocean heat content was just in a matter of 3 years ago on the 4th of July. Okay, now, and also pay attention to the Gulf of Mexico over here too, okay? Let's put this into motion. Let's take a look at now. Are you all ready for this? Boom! I mean, serious. Look at the change over here. I mean, upper ocean heat content is much further north. The yellow line is now, look at the change. I mean, that is absolutely undescribable. Not only that, look at the coverage of orange and red here on your screen too. Pay close attention to the loop current there. I mean, look back 3 years ago, the Gulf was already warm to begin with. Remember that? Gave us some nasty landfalls. Look at now 3 years of today. Even warmer. Look at that loop current. Really deep upper ocean heat content. So this, again, I'm not trying to hype this up for views, for entertainment, but this is absolutely concerning and very alarming, okay? For someone to say that in this type of video, really, it takes a lot for me to get worried. And this is pretty far north. Imagining when we get a system that turns like this, could strengthen over the central Atlantic. Even if it goes here and kind of stays over this upper ocean heat content, could really be a problem. So now, how far down does the 80-degree isotherm extend? This is really alarming. We're looking at anywhere between 300 to 700 feet down. Water temperatures that warm extend. So yeah, if you get a category 5, it's going to only upwell warmer water right beneath it. What hurricanes like to do, they like to take a lot of that heat out of the ocean and expel it into the atmosphere. After all, hurricanes and tropical cyclones are heat-driving engines in the atmosphere, and they rely on very deep, warm water to thrive off of. So when you see oranges and reds here, that's really deep. That's not shallow at all. And the loop current really illustrates just how far down these warm waters extend. Even fairly deep here, a couple of hundred, maybe 300 feet down in the central North Atlantic. The main development region is ready to go. So it's just a matter of when things get active. It's a ticking time bomb. Quiet now, might get active late July and early August. And I promise you folks, just because we have El Nino doesn't mean that we're going to have an inactive season. We already have had 3 named storms, and I think we're going to get into a very tough time ahead by the time we go into August, but especially in early September, when I think we could have a really, really big problem on our hands. All right. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. I am here during the Atlantic hurricane season. I'm going to do more of these discussions, followed by El Nino updates, as long as that remains a concern, along to go with local weather forecasts across the United States. But you can only do that if you do subscribe, stay up to date by hitting the bell icon, and sharing this video with your family and friends on social media. But that's going to do it with this video, everyone. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow with more weather content.